to start. Oh, okay, and we're live. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Drew,
And I'm Matt.
and welcome back to the Comics and Cinema Club. And today we're going to be doing another movie muse. Today we're going to be doing something that kind of ties into our last episode, which was about Zack Snyder. We're going to be talking about the Zack Snyder Justice League cut. And the reason why is just because we realized after we did the Zack Snyder one, neither of us had actually seen his Justice League cut, and we kind of figured that we should just go and watch it and see if kind of what we said about Zack and his director style, we could still see that in that movie, or if it maybe even surprised us. So this is going to be just our thoughts and what we took away from that.
And since this film was so well received, both by Snyder Bros. And by general film critics, who in turn called this his best DC film ever, uh, imagine our surprise when that sort of sentiment actually held up, because this is actually not that bad. It has some issues which we'll get into in a second, but imagine my surprise when I found myself genuinely engaged and actually really into what was happening here, because quite frankly, I wasn't expecting to walk away with as much as I did from this film.
And I was the same way. I still don't really support the whole 4 hour movie sort of thing. In my opinion, it should really only be 2.5 hours. But I think that for what it was and for what they were trying to accomplish, it worked pretty well. There were a lot of strengths with it that outweighed the weaknesses of some of his other films. I also say this is, in my opinion, one of his best movies, actually.
Mhm.
Like, I still really like Dawn of the Dead by him, and then this is definitely up there too. So, but before we get into what we liked, we kind of figured that we just sort of talk about the quote unquote bad, or sort of like what we kind of saw that still sort of not necessarily supported what we said in our last one, but just sort of the Zack Snyder isms that we saw, and also just some, other things that weren't as great with this movie and could have been improved upon. And to me, I think the biggest thing that's still kind of held up about this one, I don't know about you, Matt, but which is sort of the depiction of Superman still. Um, just because Superman, this movie was basically a Deus Ex Machina. He didn't really exist to do anything besides jump in and save the day at the very last second. And I actually had a buddy, I was talking with a buddy about this, and he said, "Isn't that just what Superman is?" I was like, "You're not entirely wrong." But at the same time, he wasn't built up in any way throughout the movie. If anything, it was like for most of the movie, they're like, we have to do this without Superman. Superman's no longer here, so we have to go in and we got to fight this threat all on our own. And then, like, end of part 4 or part 5, they were like, okay, actually, we need to resurrect Superman. We can't do this without him. And it was like, then what is the point of the Justice League?
And like I can understand that sentiment, but this is tying into the a main problem that I knew was going to happen going into this film, and with
Mhm.
all the buildup it had over the and all the outcry. Because keep in mind, this film had a lot of demand from Snyder Bros. Uh, Due to the unfortunate fact that Zack wasn't able to finish this version due to a family tragedy, and he had to leave. Very sad event, by the way. We full condolences to his family. We love
Yeah.
it. And there was one moment in here where it's like Batman is driving away and there's a "You are not alone" sign on a wall, and I was like, man, that's heart touching. And he dedicated
Yeah.
it to his daughter. That's really touching. So anyway, we understand that sort of appeal, but or that hype that was behind it, because yeah, he did deserve to do this after going through such a terrible tragedy. But it was still going to have to deal with the main problems that arose from his last films. The fact that he killed Superman for no discernible reason, and uh, in turn, they made Superman too powerful. That, like you said, he very much is a Deus Ex Machina, because he feels like he can just solve all of this. He could take on all of the parademons. He could take on Steppenwolf on his own, really. And keep in mind, the first Justice League appearance in Brave and the Bold #28, I have that. Superman and Batman were not involved. Superman was
Mm.
in space battling space meteors, and Batman was just in Gotham dealing with Gotham shit. So,
Mhm.
quite frankly, there was no real reason for him, because the whole point of the League is to be able to solve problems that no one hero could solve. But unfortunately, Superman's appearance here kind of goes against that, because he feels like he can solve all of this. So,
Yeah.
That's just
Sorry.
me.
No, I keep. Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely moments where they were like, oh, they can't solve this exact problem with Superman, so they have to solve it. But then, like, they struggled against Steppenwolf, and then Superman shows up and beats him in like 2 minutes flat. And
Hmm.
then it just kind of like there's still tension, there's still stakes with the mother boxes converging and all this stuff happening, but it feels like when Superman shows up, he's just there to be like, oh, I have superpowers, I can do all this stuff. I will say they did cut the I remember you. Do you bleed line
Hmm.
that they had originally included. Um, but that was definitely, in my opinion, one of the weaker moments of the movie was just Superman and him showing up and everything. I feel like they could have either not had him showing up, and I get it, it's his cut, it's his vision of the movie. But if you had saved him, like if he was going to get another film for a later movie, or like had it been more of an impact for the last part, I think that would have had more of a desired impact on the movie. The other thing too was let's just say the last act of that movie did not really need to exist. Part
That little
6
epilogue,
or
yeah.
parts, yeah, the epilogue was like it was just a huge post-credit scene. That's all it was. It was like a 30-minute post-credit scene that didn't need to exist because
There
we didn't need it.
three post-credit scenes, in fact, because we have to cover. There's Lex Luthor hiring Deathstroke, bringing him on board, and he's all mellow now. I guess he didn't want like the Who Framed Roger Rabbit style version from the last from BVS, but he tells him, "Hey, you want to kill Batman? His name's Bruce Wayne." And oh, that's a bit of a turnaround compared to shouldn't we have a league of our own? Like that's cool. I'll take that. Uh, then we go into a big old future thing, which is building up to which is just teasing everything this is building up to. Darkseid appears, Superman turns evil, and all that. Which, for one thing, we are sick to death of evil Superman. So it's like,
Hmm.
for the most part, Supes across the film, his personality was fine because I remember one point that was handled so much stronger in this version than the last one. In the Whedon cut, Lois and Superman talked, and Lois was like, "You smell good," and Supes was like, "Did I not before?" And as stupid as that was, here it was. She said, "You spoke," and he was like, "Did I not before?" And that
Hmm.
makes you realize, oh shit, he wasn't speaking. That's clever. That sort of thing is kind of clever. I appreciate that. But again, it's building up to him losing Lois somehow and then falling under Darkseid's sway. And I get that that happened in the his cartoon. That was really good, and that really explored its tragedy. But I'm wondering if Zack got the opportunity to, he would have been allowed to explore that sort of impact it has on Superman's mind. And not to mention, Jared Leto as the Joker came back, and he didn't really need to exist. Which, by the way, confirms once and for all that this was Leto was Snyder's pick for the Joker, probably all the way
Hmm.
through. I don't know if his appearance in the first Suicide Squad was the director's choice or if it was Snyder's. I never knew that, but this confirmed Snyder wanted Leto, and for
Well,
better and for worse, let's just say.
it's possible he was just cast because, you know, what's his face? David Ayer had already casted him in his movie. So Zack Snyder was like, okay, I had to continue using the Joker, so we'll use David Ayer's version
Yeah, and that's
and
fine,
then
honestly.
go with that. And I mean, I think that that was the only reason why, because they weren't sure how the DCU was still going. They still wanted to connect and everything. Plus, you had the Flash showing up in that Suicide Squad movie. But I mean, yeah, Jared Leto. I mean, Jim Carrey's Joker was not that good.
Yes, it
Just
was very much. And Jim Carrey was the Riddler. Like, keep that in mind. It's
I
amazing to me. Carrey has never played the Joker before, but I don't really think he'd want to
feel like
either.
could have done a better job because it definitely felt like Jared Leto was just trying to like mimic him. And I honestly was, I was really surprised. I didn't realize that "We Live in a Society" was an actual. I thought like it was a line from the movie. It's kind of like Morbin Time. I legit
Hmm.
thought it was in the movie, and then it didn't happen. It's like, well, now I'm kind of
Society.
disappointed. Now I'm disappointed.
Society loses their minds.
Live in a society. Woo-hoo.
Yes,
Um,
and he has the exact amount of weird lines that you would expect. Like, who would
yeah,
give you a reach around?
yeah.
It's that Joker saying what you would expect that Joker to say. So there is.
Mhm.
He's there. I swear, I really want to see his version of like Death in the Family, like these two doing a Death in the Family. I really wish that came before BVS. Like if Batfleck had his own movie and it was that event, you could even throw in Deathstroke in there if you wanted. I didn't care, but that would have helped build up for BBS a bit better, in my opinion, instead of just saying having incredibly hypocritical reasons. But nonetheless, we move on. After all that, it's all a bunch of buildup, and then we move on to our final one, probably the biggest disappointment: Martian Manhunter
Yeah,
appearing.
Martian Manhunter was the weirdest part about this movie
Mhm.
because there's this whole scene where like Lois is still mourning Superman, and then Martha Kent shows up. They have this great heart to
What did you
heart.
say the name? What did you say the name?
Oh, Martha leaves, and then she
Martha.
transforms into Martian Manhunter, and then she
Martha.
transforms into the General, whose name is escaping me sadly. But that like I like the idea that like because a lot of people had predicted that. A lot of people were like, "Is the General Martian Manhunter?" So that was kind of cool that they did bring that full circle and everything. But it then made the later scene when Martha shows up at the farm to see
That's it.
Superman just kind of weird because then it's like, I just imagine like Lois is hugging Martha and it was like, I'm so glad we had that talk. And Martha's just like, what, wait, what talk? What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, I haven't seen you in days. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That whole thing was weird, and it's such a shame because we have an amazing actor portraying him. It was like the perfect pick for this
Mhm.
character. I really would have loved to have seen him be a part of this like little team up here because a lot of this lineup is based on the new 52 version, which is fine. Like that's a not a bad one to go with. It's why you have Cyborg involved, and we'll get to Cyborg in a second. That's
Mhm.
one of the best positives in this.
Cyborg was by far one of the strongest part of that movie, but we'll get to that, like he said, in a moment.
And here, I would have loved to have seen this Martian Manhunter have more screen time because it. John Jones is honestly the most underrated of all the original
Yeah.
Leaguers because he was just his powers are incredible. His personality is just so likable. It feels like he has a lot of potential to be a lot of fun in this film, but sadly, shelved for a sequel that will never happen,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like then he shows up at the end and he's like, "I'm here to help." And it's like, dude, where were you?
Where were
Why
you? We
why
needed
why
you.
were yeah, why were you here earlier? And he's just like, "Some call me Martian Manhunter." And it's just like, "Okay." And then he just flies off and it's like, "All right,
Like,
bye, dude.
do you think you could
See
bring
ya."
some? Think you could bring some Green Lanterns down here next time you're here?
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Like, we need some backup here.
The other thing too, he's not even in like the future. So like what is the point of having him, if he's not even like that post-apocalyptic like nightmare future? So what exactly is the point of having him if all you're gonna have him do is just pop up, be like, "Hi, I impersonated Martha Kent, and then I had a great talk with Lois, and then I flew off into the sunset. Bye, Batman." It's like, okay,
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
that was genuinely this
Yeah.
most disappointing element. The fact that he'll probably not return for the DCU, but and the fact this great actor
Yeah.
is wasted. But you know what? For all the time that we did have with him, he did have a cool design. He did have some uh, uh, good moments, even if it wasn't Martha Kent, Martha. But even if it wasn't Martha, that scene with Lois and him was still nice, even if it
Mm.
really didn't need to be in this movie.
Yeah. The other thing too was about this movie, and we'll get into the positives soon. I mean, it's a freaking four. That's the other thing. It's a 4 hour movie. You did not need this thing to be 4 hours, and the biggest reason for why it was 4 hours is because there's so much slow mo, and sometimes the slow mo fit. Great scene with Wonder Woman where she's fighting these bad guys in a museum, and she's like deflecting the bullets, and you have a great scene where it builds up to that, and then she goes through real fast. That was great use of slow mo. But then there were other times where it's just like, all right, we gotta do slow mo because it looks cool. And it's like, do we really need it here? Because it's just bogging down the runtime. You have scenes that are like 5 minutes long because of so much slow motion. The other thing too is like surprisingly, a lot of the humor in this stuck, and we'll get into that too. But Ezra Miller's
Fla-
Flash was
Flash.
just not funny in this movie. And I don't know if
And
it's just because of who Ezra Miller is now, or if because they just were not funny and they were trying too hard, but it just the humor did not stick with them. Other like Batman was funnier than the Flash, which is weird.
Yeah, and it's like this is the same problem that arose in the Whedon cut. Uh, Ezra's just not that funny when they're doing like improv. Excuse my misgendering there. Uh, their uh, their humor seems very much like it's trying too hard. And honest to God, there's no reason for them to be Barry Allen in this film other than just synergy. Like I would have bought them being Bart Allen a bit easier, or even like maybe Wally, but I don't know. I personally don't see any reason for this to be Barry, but nonetheless, he wasn't he the character, not he the actor. He in general just wasn't that funny. Like I found myself cringing a lot more at their lines here than I did in the Whedon cut. And remember, people when the Whedon cut first came out, people were praising Ezra Miller's Flash as one of the best elements. But as other reviewers have pointed out, people were just kind of looking for anything to like in that version, really.
Yeah, I looking back on the Whedon cut, there's not really anything I remember that I super enjoyed about it. If
Yeah.
I'm being honest. The other thing that I gotta say about this movie too, and this is a nitpick, so just the fact that Darkseid went to Earth with the mother boxes and then forgot where Earth was for almost 1,000 years or so, and was like, and then Steppenwolf's like, the anti-life equation is here, and Darkseid's like, oh yeah, it's that planet I tried to attack years ago.
It was
I
his
kind of
first and
forgot about it.
only defeat. Like you forgot
Yeah,
about that, dude? Come on.
yeah, or well, actually, maybe he didn't actually forget. Maybe it's just more like, hey guys, you know how I lost a bunch of humans, gods, Atlanteans, in a one Green Lantern? We're gonna strike that from the history books, all right? We're gonna just remove that. So
Hmm.
maybe it was more along the lines, just like it's not that he forgot. Like Steppenwolf's like, hey, I'm here on Earth, and he's like, you're where? Uh, maybe it was more along those lines that like he just didn't want to remember, but still a nitpick.
Another one last thing that I want to just talk about before we go into positives. I really felt for all the extra character development that everybody got in here, which was actually one. We'll get to that, but for all the extra character development that people got, I feel like Aquaman and Flash didn't get the most, like they as much as they deserved, because I don't know. I just feel like they should have had a bit more time to really explore a lot of what they're feeling and their personalities, because we have moments that explore their powers and them saving people. You know, Aquaman saving someone from a sinking ship, or Flash saving Iris West from a very weirdly shot car crash, because Iris is literally like dead faced, like dull surprise the entire time, and not showing any facial expressions, even as she's flying forward and about to die. And he's just focusing on this weird CGI wiener and putting that in his pocket. And
Yeah.
then we get moments that explore their powers, but not enough that explores their personalities in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And it's only these two that really suffered that, as
Yeah.
well as Superman, since Superman had some moments in the last third, but not as much because
Yeah.
again, he wasn't present throughout the rest of the film. So I think that's about all the negatives I have. So I think we can maybe move
Well,
on to positives unless you have something
I
else.
mean, I'm trying to think if there's. Sorry, I don't know what that was. That was weird. Sounded like there was music interrupting
Oh
everything.
yes, yes. The ancient lamentation
Yeah.
music that just
Yeah.
seems to need to play every single time Wonder Woman does something. It's like there are so many songs in the soundtrack and it's everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
I thought people were just joking when they said
No.
when this came out. People will always say, "Oh, that music is everywhere." I thought they were just exaggerating. It's everywhere. And it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be, honest to
No,
God.
it was the weirdest because like we'd be watching a scene and be like super intense, and then this like really loud, not even loud, but just like this ancient music came on and was just like in your face with. It's like the subtitles would literally just read like I'm not gonna
Ancient
try to
lamentation music.
thank you because I can't say that word for some reason.
Say it.
Lamentation,
Lamentations. It's in the Bible.
lamentation. There I said it. Lamentation music. Um, it just was like it'd be in your face with it. It was like ancient lamentation music. It's like what? And that was again sort of a nitpick, but just like every single time she was on scene, or every single time an Amazon would show up, it would just literally like boom.
It's
And
right
it was
there,
like,
and it's like, why? What purpose does this music serve every single scene? Like for a couple, I get it, but everywhere?
yeah,
Come on.
yeah. I will also say there were some interesting music choices too. There were like one or two scenes where it felt like the music fit, and then one or two other scenes where it felt like the music didn't fit. Like if that like because I'm trying to remember specifically, but they would use like actual songs for one or two scenes, and it'd be like super like moody and intense songs, and it didn't really fit. And then other times he used like non-moody and non-intense songs, and it did not fit either for like high intense scenes. And I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on that. But now we can move on into the positives, because there are more positives with this than the Josh Whedon cut, to be honest. And I think the thing to start with is probably going to have to be this, obviously the visuals, and then
Mhm.
also the designs, because the design of Steppenwolf was much better in this movie. He actually looked menacing. He actually didn't just look like a big pile of mush wearing like armor. Like his armor was actually like almost alive at times, which was cool to see.
Mhm.
Um, and that can also like apply to the Amazons. The Amazons also had cool armor, and if you look at the Whedon cut versus the Snyder cut, they a little more revealing in the Whedon cut. I think I could be wrong, but that's just
Gra-
what I saw there.
Granted, a couple of them have like just the like
Yeah,
a armored bikini look, but you know what? It fits with the Amazons, and
yeah,
I've seen worse designs for them from
yeah,
the comics, so I'm cool with this. And
yeah.
again, for all the for Steppenwolf, he actually looks pretty cool. Like for all the problems you can that can arise from making him the first villain that the Justice League ever faces, he actually feels a lot more what's the word, menacing here, because not only is his outfit cooler, he's bigger, he's buffer, he has more menacing lines. It felt like he has more presence in this film
Mm.
compared to the Whedon cut. And what's it, him that little moment of what as we were watching this, he stepped away for a second, and uh, we get to the scene where Steppenwolf is talking to Darkseid, and his armor just falls away, and I just shout, "Good grief, he's naked!" It's like, come, Drew,
Yeah, I
get
forgot
back
about
here.
no, I forgot about that. Yeah, he was naked for a minute. They also like they made the horns like a part of it, like were actually his head,
Hmm.
and his whole like body. He just looked different, and he looked menacing, and it worked. And the same can be said for Darkseid. Darkseid's design was cool in this. He actually looked like a threat. He looked menacing. He looked really cool to see, and to, when he showed up, he doesn't have many scenes, but when he does show up, he's actually like a presence. It's not just like in the first one where Steppenwolf just went for Darkseid and that was it.
And keep in mind, DC can have some issues designing their characters in live action. If you look at their version of the Anti-Monitor for the CW, he's literally just Thanos, and just fused with Ultron in some ways. Here, he actually looks like what we expect from Darkseid. He looks like he's made of rocks. He looks like a new god. He looks like Darkseid in live action, and that's all we can really ask for. And he had his one moment where he showed off his Omega beams. That was really cool. So even if we never see it again, I'm glad that we got him for as much as we did in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a lot of the other designs, like the black suit Superman, I'll admit, was really cool to see, even if he wasn't in it for that much. And the fact that they didn't have to CGI anything out this time around,
No, they did
also,
not.
yeah, which also helped. And I mean, again, it's a Zack Snyder film, so the visuals in general look very good. And again,
Yeah,
that will always be the thing I take away from Zack Snyder is he knows his visuals. He really does.
he
And
really does. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but I
yeah,
just want to say, how is it that a film that is so much brighter and has a lot more color,
mhm,
like the Whedon cut, looks worse than something that's drab and has all the
yeah,
colors muted? I don't know why,
yeah,
but for some reason, this is a bit more appealing. And
yeah.
maybe it's because it looks more professional, looks more finished, whereas the Whedon one looked like uh, Dark Souls bosses at a certain point, or just in general video game characters like Injustice. Whereas here they feel more physical, a lot more
Mhm.
real, and I don't know why that is.
The other thing too is that even though it was like darker, it wasn't like too dark. Like you could still see what was going on. Nothing felt like it was overwhelmingly like dark. And when you had the darker shades around, it added to the realistic tone that they were going for. Whereas the Whedon cut, I honestly think what might have happened is they shot a certain way that the color contrast was darker. And then when they did the Whedon cut, Josh Whedon literally bumped the contrast up. So
Hmm.
he might have literally like had a color grader go in and color grade it differently than what it already was, and that's why it didn't look as good because he was literally making it look too bright and too colorful. Because I also remember in the Whedon cut, the whole final fight, there's like in the Snyder cut, there's this big like dome and it's at night, whereas in the Whedon cut, the final fight's during the day and it's also like weird color stuff everywhere. So it definitely felt a little like Matt was saying, brighter. And also the fact that the final fight was in a unoccupied town kind of made a little more sense than in an occupied, especially since it's in like a irradiated ass area of Russia. So
Yes. And again, I usually criticize films that superhero films that have like a lack of color because superhero comics should be bright and colorful unless they're doing something. And even like for darker stories like Dark Knight Returns, I would expect striking colors that could pop at you. But for all the muted colors in this film, it honestly matches the tone, look, and feel much better, and it has more of an identity, I would say, like a
mhm,
positive identity, unlike something like Fantastic, which was just trying to be
mhm.
too unpleasant. It looked like it was embarrassed to have anything to do with a comic book. This, on the other hand, is embracing that, but just trying to be like a somewhat darker comic book. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And it worked. Like visually it worked really well. Even like the Speed Force stuff was really cool. When
Hmm.
Barry is in the Speed Force, he's running forward and that looked like visually pleasing. Cyborg didn't just look like a big weird like I remember the Cyborg in the Whedon cut, he just looked very odd. He looked
Hmm.
kind of off-putting. Whereas in the Snyder cut, he looks more put together and more fleshed out, if that makes sense. And that can be said for his character too, because
Yes.
by far, Ray Fisher Cyborg was the best character in this movie because they did a really good job with giving him his origin story and then building upon that, and also just making him his character fit Cyborg. I wish he'd said Booyah, but comic nerd point. But the rest of him just fit. It felt like he felt like Cyborg.
Yes, it really did. And all of the visuals with him, like when he's discovering uh what he can do with his powers, like he's going to this cyber world, that's interesting. That's unique. That's something that I'd want to see from a cyborg led movie if he ever got one. I really wish he did. But this is a point to note between directors because Whedon and Ray Fisher infamously did not get along well, so a lot of his elements were cut from the film. Whereas Zack Snyder so felt this character was so gypped he gave him so much attention and a whole lot of development and personality. And we actually got to see his backstory instead of just talking about it, which, in my opinion, helps make this character feel more whole, even if his body isn't. A bit of
Yeah,
dark humor there.
yeah.
And not to mention his design is good. Like every now and again, I thought he looked like kind of Ultronish, but I felt like when you see his face melded with everything, it does feel like Cyborg. It's like a live action Cyborg that I would want to see. And I'm glad that he got the attention and development that he did. I wish that, like I said, Aquaman and Flash got a bit more, but I do feel all the development he got for him certainly made up for the last time. And not to mention, everyone else, all the other characters got some good development too, because Batman and Wonder Woman have some surprisingly strong
Mhm.
chemistry here. Like I'm wondering if Snyder is a fellow Wonder Bat shipper, in which
Yeah.
case, fellow men of culture.
Yeah. I mean, for real, like those three characters were by far the strongest ones. Well, that and Alfred. Alfred was just funny. But
Alfred.
yeah, they just did a good job because I definitely feel like Wonder Woman and Batman needed to be at the forefront because Batman was a big part of BVS. Wonder Woman was a big part of Wonder Woman because it's her movie,
Yes.
and she also was a somewhat big part of BVS. They set her up well there. And then I definitely just think that the way that they ended up using Cyborg and building upon him, I legit think that Zack Snyder should have just done a Cyborg movie And
Hmm.
that would have been way cooler to see. You know, you could have done Apocalypse stuff with that because he's connected to the mother box and everything. But it was cool seeing his relationship with his mom, relationship with his dad, see how that all play out. And the ending, he legit just felt like the main character. He felt like the protagonist of the movie. Like in all the six other heroes, he felt like the one who had the real focus and attention. And that can also allow us to shift attention away from the fact that someone just kept the mother box in a closet.
And in a hole in the ground before that.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
literally just put that next to the shoe rack. Like what the hell, man? Like put that shit in like a vault or something.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Like he
well,
literally just put that in his home. How did the government like allow him to walk away from that? That's like me going to Area 51 and walking away with some black site tech and just keeping it in my fucking closet for the government to come and steal it back. It's like what the hell, man?
yeah. That didn't make any sense to me. It was like, hey, let's just take the mother box and put it in a closet, and they never really like explained why beyond the fact that he'd used it to fix Cyborg. But that was
Maybe
kind of it.
maybe the mother box is in the closet and she just doesn't want anyone to find out.
It's possible. Come on, mother box, you can come out.
Yeah.
Um,
Come
we're
on,
we're all supportive here.
come on, come on, Tom Cruise, come out of the closet already.
Oh no.
I'm kidding, I'm
That's a
just
South
joking.
Park joke.
South Park
Right.
reference. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. No,
Don't
no, that's
sue us,
okay.
Tom Cruise. Don't sue
Um,
us.
he's too short. He can't reach the computer.
Yes.
The other thing too, or he's running over here right now. Maybe I see him out the window.
Oh God, he's
Um,
doing all his own stunts. He's coming out of a helicopter to break into my window. Ah!
yeah. Uh, the other thing too that I liked about the movie was, there was darkness, but there was humor, but it never felt like, your stereotypical like nowadays sort of comic book movie humor where it's like, oh, he's right behind me, isn't he? It legit had like some funny lines and some funny moments that actually like stuck out and were able to offset the otherwise very, very dark tone of the movie because we literally see Victor's dad, the cyborg's dad, Silas, like get blown apart by his own creation, which was intense. And then a whole lot of very brutal and violent, like future scenes, the Superman stuff. It just was a lot. So it was good that they were able to incorporate some comedy while not losing the dark tone. That's kind of like the comedy that we want. You can do comedy and make a superhero movie have comedy, but still keep the dark tone of it. If you don't have any humor and it's just darkness all the way through, that doesn't always play well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, it just felt a lot more natural than some other attempts by other comic companies, be it Marvel or Image or
Yeah.
whatever. Like sometimes humor in their films can feel pretty forced. So I'm
Mhm.
grateful that uh, here it just felt more natural and smooth.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of the biggest praise that I can give this. Tonally and stylistically, it's much more well composed and much more aware of what it wants to be. Whereas with the Whedon cut, you have two different styles working against each other because you have what Snyder did do before he had to leave, and then you have what Whedon did, and these two styles are very different from each other. They're just too contrasting, and stylistically and tonally, the film was all over the place. So here, things feel way more succinct. Things
Mhm.
feel way more like intentional. So I'm very much grateful for that. That's one of the biggest praises I can give this version of the Justice League.
Yeah, the story also fits a lot better. And the way that they framed the story, and again, you have 4 hours to tell it, so of course you're going to get it all in. But the way that they framed it just worked really well. The way that they were able to go from this to that to this to that, and it made more sense how Steppenwolf got the. Because I remember in like the Whedon cut, he just sort of showed up and grabbed the box while they were fighting, and then boom, toomed out of there and was like goodbye. Whereas in this one, like there's more of a sacrifice with Cyborg's dad legitimately trying to like destroy the box, and he has no time, so he ends up destroying himself with it. He doesn't destroy the box, but he just kills himself in a very sacrifice sort of way. It didn't feel like a fridging moment or anything like that where we just have to kill him to motivate the heroes. It was he didn't have a choice, so he did it, and it fit more with the movie and everything. And again, I think that the way that Lois and Superman is able to be calmed down also worked better, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those moments also played better as well, just in general. I think that the movie was juggling a lot, and even for 4 hours, it was a lot to juggle. But what it was able to get right, it got right very well.
Yeah, and it felt like Snyder learned a lot of lessons from Wonder Woman's film, actually, because what I noticed during that film was that the soldiers she was fighting with in World War One, they were not built up to be other superheroes. They were just soldiers. They were heroes already in their own right. They were just
Mm,
people.
mm,
So it's nice to have superheroes interact with the people that they save.
mm.
And this is something Marvel has done as well. But nonetheless, here it felt like it was carrying over from Wonder Woman, and a lot. And this is why Silas Stone's sacrifice works so well, because it shows you don't need to have superpowers to or be Batman to be a superhero in your own right, to be helpful in some way, shape, and form. So that's why his sacrifice was so meaningful. And yeah, we also have Ryan Cho here, who Choi,
Mhm.
or is it Cho?
Choi, it's Choi, I
Choi.
believe. Yeah,
That
if we're mispronouncing it, we
sorry.
apologize. But
Yeah, he's the third Atom. He could be built up to be could have been built up to be the Atom at a certain point, but you know what? Here he's just a guy. You know, he's just a scientist, just trying to help out. And we also have references to Wesley Dodds, the Sandman,
yeah,
and uh, some other characters too. Who else did we have? I'm sure we had
some
someone.
call me Martian Manhunter.
Yes,
I'm
him.
kidding.
But
There
who else
were
did we
others.
have?
No, there were definitely a lot others. I'm looking at some. Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, he was like the fifth Adam.
Fifth Atom. Sorry.
I didn't know either. I actually thought he was the second, but there's like a whole slew of them. There was a Al Pratt was the first Adam. Then it was Ray Palmer.
Hmm.
Then very briefly Paul Hoban, but Paul Hoban never actually used the costume or the name. Adam Cray, who was a member of the Suicide Squad, and then finally Ryan Choi.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let me look real quick. I'm just gonna go to GL Snyder cut because there were a lot, and I felt like the characters here were dealt with a lot more grace when because they were just Easter eggs in comparison to. I will always remember how um the other movie how what am I trying to say? BVS had a director's cut where freaking um Jimmy Olsen was an FBI agent and then
Hmm.
he just gets killed and it's like seriously that's what you're gonna do to Jimmy? He's Jimmy freaking Olsen.
Yeah, like
But
you know, not a lot of people care about him, but he's Superman's
yeah,
pal. Like, give him like
yeah,
a HBO Max series at least.
yeah, do something with him besides just having him die in like two
Hell,
seconds flat.
his series was one of the most popular back in the '50s with Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and it's honestly a really good series. I would recommend people read that if they can find it online. You know.
Hmm. Uh, so I'm just looking through like the cast list. They don't have any like super names or anything for anybody, but we did have Kilowog showed up in a CGI version of him very
Oh yeah,
briefly. We also had a cameo of a guy named Jerry, who was obviously meant to be
sequel.
yeah, to Jerry Siegel, the creator of Superman. He was actually played by the guy who was Jimmy Olsen in the original Superman movies.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. And then we had Granny Goodness show up, Desaad, and of course, Commissioner J. Jonah Jameson was also,
I
which
need to
is
go back to
very.
New York.
I need to get pictures of Spider-Man. I need those pictures now. Damn it.
I know I should never have
Commissioner.
left. I know I shouldn't have never left the music teaching business.
Oh no. Commissioner, we need you to. What are you gonna do with crime in Gotham? I need
Not,
pictures of Spider-Man.
not quite my tempo.
Oh God.
That's my
He
favorite.
just
That's like my favorite role of him, and it's like the worst.
he just fucking throws like a symbol at Batman and like waxes at him off the roof or something.
God, that was a good. We got to cover that film at a certain point.
We got to.
Honestly.
We got to cover that film, and then you also mentioned we got to cover Fan Four Stick at some point too.
Yeah, we'll deal with that when we deal with that.
Sadly,
But
the
nonetheless,
other
right now,
yeah, other one who showed up too was Mara.
yes,
Yeah.
she was built up a lot in the post credit scene. So the one thing that I'm glad is not going to go anywhere, I'm glad it's her.
Yeah,
It's her.
yeah. Hopefully, I mean, she was used in the Aquaman movies, but not
Nobody
like
cared.
excessively. Yeah. Oh, I guess Zack Snyder was actually in it.
Oh, where?
Huh. He was when Lois goes to get her coffee, he is sitting in the window.
Oh, ain't that neat?
Yeah. I just pulled up just a page to look at what sort of heroes showed up. The other thing, like this is sort of a random thing that they did that I wish that they could have definitely done more within. They did the whole thing where they all of a sudden went back to 1945 to talk about how the Nazis found the mother box.
That just came
Um,
out of nowhere. It's like, whoa,
yeah,
you're gonna say that, huh?
yeah, it was just kind of like, you guys want to do anything with this? No? Okay. And it felt like they could have done like some Justice Society stuff with that if they wanted to. Like they could have had the Oz, like Wesley Dodds or Jay Garrick or any of those guys show up. But I think that we actually, I'm trying to find because I know there was like one we weren't talking about or mentioning, but I don't think they covered it. Um,
I know we saw Wesley, we saw Ryan.
mhm. Wasn't
We
even
didn't
like
see.
Wesley Dodds. It was just wasn't or were you the one who mentioned Kent Nelson? My bad. My bad.
No, he wasn't in this, was he?
No. You mentioned him.
We
Oh,
did.
well yeah. You mentioned like I forget why you were talking. You were like, "Oh, what's another name?" And you mentioned Kent Nelson, I
Like it's
think.
a name to throw out there. Like just have it on the wall or some uh
Hmm.
somewhere. Just say Kent Nelson in the background. Ooh, like this was a problem that I feel like Zach has learned from.
Yeah.
Movies are not a competition for how much shit you can jam into it. And just because you give two characters the same name doesn't make them the same character. So I'm grateful that he's actually learned his lesson there and just kept all the excessive stuff as
Hmm.
Easter eggs as opposed to just being important.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool. You were asking about the meaning behind the name of the crate and the mother box that was stored in the Object 6 1982.
Mm-hmm.
Cyborg's origin story came out in an issue of Tales of the New Titans in June of 1982.
Oh, ain't that neat?
Yeah, that's a cool little Easter egg. There's a lot of really cool Easter eggs that sort of are used in this. I guess Ben Parker's in the movie actually.
Which
No,
one?
on
Which one? Adam
Uncle
Scott
Ben.
or fucking which
No,
one?
I
Adam
mean
Scott
so
or like the other one?
I
What's his
don't
name?
know, but I have no idea. But if you look at like the Flash gets tossed against the memorial at one point, Ben Parker's name is on there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Can we say that like legally?
I guess. I don't know. No one's gonna sue us. Oh, Crispus Allen, the guy who would
Oh,
become the Spectre, was in the.
yes, that's it.
Yeah, he Spectre's a cool character too, kind of like a spooky ghost man.
I could have sworn there
Uh,
was like another name at the beginning that when you saw it, you were shocked.
I'm
I just
looking.
trying to remember what it was.
I'm looking right now because I'm on a page that has a whole bunch of Easter eggs in it. There were a lot of references. Zack Snyder has a project called Fountainhead.
Hmm.
That's a base. It's a book. He wants to make a movie of it. There's a lot of references to it, I guess, in this. I'm still looking. Oh, that might have been it. I might. Yeah. Okay. I haven't found anything else. So
Well, nonetheless, plenty of good cameos, and they actually
yeah.
feel like the solid cameos as opposed to
Mhm.
just being tossed in for the sake of being tossed in, like Wonder Woman kind of felt like in BVS.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. Exactly.
so again, a lot of elements here feel like he's actually learning from the criticisms of his last films, and it feels like he's actually growing. So
Yeah.
in that sense, I could see why someone would want him to actually do more DC films, but unfortunately, I don't really see that happening anymore. I think this
Yeah.
is like a one and done deal.
I find it very funny when I see people say, "Hey, have Zack Snyder do the Justice League movies on Netflix." It's like that's not how the rights work, buddy. I'm sorry. Like that's not how that works. But yeah, I definitely think that like if we gotten more Justice League movies and they've been more like this, I definitely think that we would have had better, you know, reactions. And I agree. I definitely do kind of for once. I agree with the Snyder Bros in the sense that WB should have just let Zack Snyder do his own thing. They
Hmm.
shouldn't have interfered. They shouldn't have cut as much as they did. They should have just let it be, and we would have had a pretty decent movie, to be honest.
I am tempted to sing a Beatles song, but I feel like that would get us struck down because it costs millions of dollars just to use a couple notes in one show. So, uh, never mind. Um, that said, I am looking forward to what James Gunn is going to do with DC. And
Yeah.
fun fact, apparently it's so good. Jerry Siegel's one of his descendants actually gave him a mint in bag copy of Action Comics #1, like
Yeah.
signed by Jerry Siegel to like hang on his wall. So that's honestly really impressive.
Yeah.
But again, if Snyder did more films, if they were like this, I don't think he would have been as controversial of a figure as he is nowadays, because he himself has some bad takes sometimes, and if a lot of his rumored plans for other DC films were true, like Batman stealing Lois from Superman, if that's actually true, I don't know how well they would have worked, but it would
Yeah.
have been him doing this. You know, it would have been Zack Snyder's films.
Yeah. The other thing too is he went from this to doing Rebel Moon, which I'm not a big Rebel Moon guy, and definitely was that definitely is one of the reasons why I was kind of like, when we were going to watch this. I don't know. I- Apparently, I'm reading stuff that part two is better than part one of Rebel Moon, but it's also kind of like I think it's better because you established so much in part one. If that makes sense, and you had much more going on. Again, I'm not trying to
That's
like,
that's like Dune logic. It's
yeah,
part, so keep that in mind.
yeah, I don't know. And I honestly did not really like part one of Dune. I preferred the second part, so maybe I'll enjoy this one more. But
Yeah.
that's just sort of my 2 cents on that. Is that I think Zack Snyder is a capable director. It's just some of the directions and some of the decisions that he makes kind of hurt his ultimate like direction.
And keep in mind, when we made our episode surrounding him, we had only been, by that point, we had been exposed to him doing superhero films wrong, like Man of Steel and BVS. This is one demonstrating how he can get it right. And
Mm,
in all honest to God, I think it's a solid film. Like, it's like way better, a solid improvement of the first one. And overall, I feel like it is probably the best film that he's done for DC, and one of his
yeah.
best films out there, because I've enjoyed 300, honest
Mhm.
to God, and
Yeah,
this. So I'll give this I'll give this 7 out of 10.
I would give it the same ranking, honestly. I honestly do give it a 7 out of 10 just because I feel like that there could have been some things that could have been improved upon to make it better. But again, for what it was, for what we got, it was by far the superior Marvel. Why did you say Marvel? What the fuck? Sorry.
DC.
DC movie, if I'm being honest. So I'm hoping that, we can get more movies like that when James Gunn is in charge. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes, and I'm honestly looking forward to it because James Gunn's one of my favorite directors. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
may be partially biased, but I'm kind of glad that the Snyderverse ended on a high note with this.
Yeah.
As a, I mean, granted, the DCEU did not, since it ended with Aquaman 2 and Black Adam, and it did have
Mhm.
Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle was really
Mm.
good, but
Yeah.
that bombed. That bombed hard
Yeah.
because I don't know why, but
Well,
uh,
it bombed because they didn't do a good job with the marketing. Their
no, they
marketing
didn't.
was literally, hey, let's give all the marketing to Ezra Miller's movie, even though they should be in prison at this point. And they didn't put any focus onto the Beetle film. And Blue Beetle's not perfect. That's another one we might have to talk about. But it's better than the Flash. I'll say that in my opinion. I haven't even
Yeah,
seen the Flash, so
yeah, it honest to God is, because I've I have seen like bits and pieces of it here and there. I didn't
yeah.
see it in theaters because I didn't really want to support this, given Ezra was involved.
Hmm.
But from what I have seen, the usage of AI art and like a whole lot of stuff for resurrecting dead actors for cameos, it's like it's not necessary. But
No.
nonetheless, for all, we'll get into Flash maybe one day. But Blue Beetle
Yeah.
definitely better. But unfortunately, this whole DCEU ended kind of on a low notes with bombs after bombs after bombs. And I'm grateful that at the very least Snyder's films ended on this kind of a high note. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone interested if you have
Yeah.
4 hours to kill.
Yeah. Or break it. We honestly broke it up into like 2 different days. Our whole idea was, and I don't know if you mentioned this. So, um, we were watching it at the first part of it, and my sister walked in, and she was like, "What are you guys watching?" And I explained to her, and she's like, "This looks nothing like the first movie." And that basically is
Exactly.
like that's the point. It's like it actually is better because it's nothing like the Josh Whedon cut. That's what makes it so much more appealing, in my opinion, to a lot of people. I just don't think the Snyder Bros needed to hype it up as much as they did. Um, but I definitely think that there were like after Zack Snyder sort of left that end of the Marvel, or why do I keep saying fucking Marvel? It's in my
DC.
brain. I'm the DC sort of universe. Um, he ended up like it kind of split into like 5 different universes because then there was like the Hamadaverse, there was the DCU, there was this different universe where all these different stuff going on, and they didn't really have like a clear focus where they wanted to go with it. And then you
And
had like,
that's
yeah,
it's honest to God one of DC's strengths because when DC is doing really well, it's not trying to be like Marvel. Because the
mhm,
first two films were trying to be like Marvel, but in doing so, they went from Iron Man straight to Civil War, and that's
yeah,
not really how you do that. So you have to be able. Marvel works because it's a continuous story, and for better or for worse, they're keeping that story going, and that's gratifying for like longtime fans. But with DC, a lot of the charm comes from the simple fact that a lot of these films can be different from each other. They have different things
yeah,
going on. They have like Elseworld stories with the Batman or Joker Foy le Deux, because I can't
mhm,
speak French. Because and all that stuff. DC works better when it's just trying to be its own thing. It's not trying to be like Marvel. So I really hope the DCU, the next one, learns from that and just tries to do its own thing and have fun, and not try to catch up to
yeah.
Marvel because it doesn't really need to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that was always the problem with Josh Whedon's version of Justice League is that it tried too hard to be just like the Marvel stuff, and it didn't need to. It really didn't.
And it's a shame because Joss gave us one of the best in the Avengers. So
Yeah,
it's like, how did you mess this up like so much? Honest to
because
God.
he's Josh Whedon and he's a very
Yes.
controversial person, which is another reason why he does not work in Hollywood anymore. So,
Yes.
or if he does, he's very low on the totem pole at this point. So,
It's a shame. He went from Buffy, Astonishing X-Men, Avengers. Dude
mm,
gave us a whole lot of pop culture nerd stuff.
yeah.
And now he's just kind of fallen off the face of the earth after all this.
He had
So
one show that came out a couple years ago during COVID, and I remember I was like, "Oh, cool! This show looks nice. I wonder who created it." And it's a Josh Whedon. I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind." Um,
I
it was about
remember
like, yeah,
I remember a gag from Futurama. It's like at one point, Lure, ruler of planet Omicron Persei 8 comes to like a Comic Con thing, and everybody just thinks he's in costume. He's like, "Why
yeah,
is nobody bowing in fear of me?" Lilo is just like, "I think they're getting ready for Joss Whedon," and
yeah,
Lure was just like, "Joss Whedon's here," and he was just so excited. That kind of excitement's not around anymore.
yeah. That did not age well.
No, it didn't. And
Uh,
honestly, maybe it did because he was evil after all. Like Lur is evil, so maybe it does
yeah,
age well from his perspective.
yeah, it's possible. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, honestly, if he makes a comeback. So,
He may very well. Honestly, worse people have tried.
yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I think that that's all we got to say, unless you got any other thoughts you want to put out there.
Overall, I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and I would definitely recommend it, even if the 4 hour time can feel a bit daunting. Because honestly, when we were watching it, I didn't really notice a whole lot of time passing. Like our last call when we were watching it lasted like 3.5 hours, and I didn't
Mhm.
really feel like that because that's kind of how well this movie flows. So
Yeah.
definitely recommend from us.
Yeah, despite the flaws that were there, it definitely flowed better. It definitely had a better story, and in general, it was worth it. So, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for sticking around, and we're happy that this did not take 4 hours to talk about. And hope you guys come back for next time for whatever we're going to be talking about next, whether that's comics, movies, or something else. We'll see.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a nice week.
Goodbye.
Bye. Music.
Ancient Limitian music.
Limitation. Say it right.